Dear English learners, have you ever wondered why millions of people felt sadness when a wrestling legend passed away at the age of 71? His name was Hulk Hogan, and for more than 4 decades, his presence filled arenas' television screens and the hearts of fans across the world. He was not just a man in a ring. He was a symbol of strength, confidence, and entertainment. From the 1980s to the 2000s, Hulk Hogan's name was almost impossible to escape. He walked into stadiums with his bright bandana, ripped his shirt in front of cheering crowds, and raised his hand to his ear, asking fans to shout louder. Can you picture the noise, the excitement, the feeling of being part of something larger than life? For millions, that was their childhood memory. But behind the bright lights and the fame stood a human being with dreams, struggles, mistakes, and lessons. His story is not only about victories in wrestling, it is also about how fame can lift a man high and how life can challenge him when the cameras are off. Today, as you practice your English, you will also walk beside this unforgettable figure and feel the rise and fall of his story. Are you ready? Hulk Hogan was not born as a superstar. He entered the world on August 11th, 1953 in Augusta, Georgia, with the name Terry Gene Bollea. When he was still a child, the family moved to Tampa, Florida. His father worked in construction and his mother taught dance. They were an ordinary family, living a quiet life far from fame. As a boy, Terry was shy and often kept to himself, yet he carried 2 great passions. One was music. He loved the guitar, and he could play for hours, dreaming of becoming a rock musician. The other was sports. He admired athletes and enjoyed watching wrestling on television. For a time, he even imagined himself as a professional baseball player. Life, however, had its own plans. Injuries closed some doors, and disappointments followed. Still, what remained clear was his unusual size. By his teenage years, Terry was already tall, broad, and strong. People turned to look at him wherever he went. He did not yet know it, but his body and his determination were slowly shaping the path ahead. The shy boy with a guitar and big dreams would one day become Hulk Hogan, a name shouted in stadiums across the world. Terry Bollea's childhood looked ordinary on the surface. He went to school, spent time with friends, and practiced music. Yet, beneath the surface, he was already facing moments that would test him. Baseball was his first serious passion. He practiced for hours, swinging the bat and running with hope in his heart. But then came an injury to his arm. Doctors told him he could not continue at a professional level. For a young boy with a dream, it was devastating. He carried that disappointment with him for years. Music became his comfort. He picked up his guitar and played with intensity. With a few friends, he formed a band. They played in local clubs, sometimes to small crowds, sometimes to almost no one. But Terry kept going. Music gave him a sense of identity. It was the first time he learned how performance could connect him with people. Still, something about Terry was different from the others on stage. He was enormous. By the time he was a teenager, he stood over 6 feet tall and weighed far more than his peers. Teachers noticed. Strangers noticed. Even when he tried to stay quiet, his size made him visible. In Tampa, Terry discovered wrestling gyms. Local wrestlers trained there, and he watched them with fascination. The mix of sport theater and power drew him in. Slowly, he began training, lifting heavy weights, and building a body that seemed ready for more than just music. No one could have guessed then that this quiet boy would transform into the most famous face in professional wrestling. But the seeds of Hulk Hogan's future were already being planted in those early years. The road to greatness is never smooth. Terry's journey into wrestling was marked by pain and doubt. When he first trained, he realized wrestling was not just about strength. It was about discipline, about learning how to fall without breaking bones, about controlling your body while making the fight look real. Training was brutal. Many young men gave up. Terry considered it too, but something inside pushed him forward. Then came disaster. During one training session, his leg was seriously injured. The pain was so great that doctors warned he might never wrestle again. For months, he lived with uncertainty. Could he continue? Was his dream ending before it had truly begun? Even when he returned to the ring, success did not come quickly. The money was small. Crowds were not always impressed. Some critics dismissed wrestling as fake. Others doubted whether Terry had the charisma to succeed. And later, even after fame, came new struggles arrived. The pressure of constant performance weighed on him. Scandals and mistakes would one day damage his reputation. Fans who once adored him sometimes turned away. For a man who had lived on cheers, the silence was painful. These crises remind us that even the strongest heroes are human. For Hulk Hogan, the struggles were not the end. They were tests that prepared him for the moment when his life would change forever. Every story has a turning point, and for Terry Bollea, it was the moment he became Hulk Hogan. In the late 1970s, professional wrestling was growing in popularity on American television. Promoters wanted someone larger than life, someone who looked like a comic book hero. Terry, with his massive frame, was the perfect choice. He dyed his hair blonde, wore a bandana, and stepped into the ring as Hulk Hogan. The true turning point came in 1984. In Madison Square Garden, Hogan faced the Iron Sheik for the WWF Championship. With a burst of power, he defeated his opponent and held the title high. The crowd erupted. In that moment, Hulk Hogan became the face of wrestling. From then on, every entrance was electric. He tore off his shirt, cupped his hand to his ear, and invited the crowd to roar. Children copied his moves in their living rooms. Adults admired his strength. His image spread beyond wrestling into cartoons, movies, and global media. This was the birth of Hulkamania. Fans wore yellow shirts, waved banners, and shouted his words, "Train, say your prayers, and eat your vitamins." He was no longer just a wrestler. He was a cultural icon representing energy and belief to millions. For Terry, the shy boy was gone. Hulk Hogan, the legend, had arrived. The peak of Hogan's career was unforgettable. Wrestling was no longer a small show. It had become a worldwide spectacle, and Hogan was at its center. One match became legendary: WrestleMania 3 in 1987. In front of more than 90,000 fans, Hogan faced Andre the Giant, a man of enormous size and strength. With all eyes watching, Hogan lifted the 240-kilogram giant and slammed him to the mat. The stadium shook with cheers. That single move became one of the most iconic moments in wrestling history. Hogan went on to win multiple championships in both WWF and WCW, but his influence stretched far beyond titles. He appeared in films, television shows, and commercials. His face was on toys posters and video games. He was the first wrestler who became bigger than wrestling itself. Of course, the story was not perfect. Fame brought heavy costs. Controversies and personal struggles later damaged his image. But even with those shadows, the impact of Hulkamania remained. He opened doors for future stars and showed that wrestling could stand alongside mainstream entertainment. When fans look back, they remember not only the victories, but also the feeling. The joy, the noise, the sense of belonging to something larger. That is the legacy of Hulk Hogan, one that continues to echo long after the final match. When we remember Hulk Hogan, we see more than bright shirts and powerful muscles. We see a man who stumbled many times, but who always found a way to rise again. Think of that shy boy sitting alone with a guitar, not sure of his future. Life closed one door after another. Baseball ended. Injuries came. Doubts followed him. Yet step by step, he kept moving forward. Doesn't that make us think about our own journeys too? That sometimes failure is not the end, but the beginning of something new. Fame brought him glory, but also shadows. Behind the cheers were mistakes, regrets, and broken seasons. And still, his life whispers a truth: even heroes are human. Falling does not mean finishing. There can always be a second chance if we choose to stand again. Perhaps the most powerful lesson is connection. Hogan had the gift of turning a crowd of strangers into one heartbeat. People shouted together, believed together, and felt part of something greater. That is why millions followed him. In the same way, when we learn English, it is not only about grammar or vocabulary. It is about connection. It's about telling our story so that someone else can feel less alone. From Hulk Hogan, we learn this: keep walking, stay humble, and never let your mistakes decide the end of your story. As we reach the end of this story, we see not just a wrestler, but a man whose life still speaks today. Hulk Hogan's journey was full of triumphs and failures, but above all, it was full of passion. He showed the world what it means to give everything to a dream, to inspire a crowd, and to keep going even after the hardest falls. When news came that he had passed away at the age of 71, the world did not only say goodbye to a superstar, it said farewell to an era, to the sound of Hulkamania, and to a man who carried the hopes of millions into every arena. But his story does not end in silence. It continues each time someone remembers the energy of his matches, the joy of the crowd, or the courage of a man who dared to be larger than life. Thank you for joining me today. May every story you hear bring light to your learning, and may your own journey be full of courage and hope. Until next time, keep learning, keep believing, and keep your spirit strong.